Georgian writers were always actively engaged in the public and state affairs, but especially noteworthy in this regard is the 19th century and Ilia Chavchavadze. He made a multifaceted contribution to the formation of the Georgian state, and his values are exactly in line with those of the leading countries of the world of the period. In the second half of the 19th century, not only the low social strata experienced economic hardship in Georgia, but the nobility as well. Their estates were sold in succession in the debts of the state order, and they tried to save their property by entering the Russian military service and by the small salaries earned there. It was necessary to find another way to improve the situation in the country. The progressive part of the Georgian nobility decided to allot one-fifth of the grant received as a compensation for the liberation of serfs to establish the land bank. Ilia Chavchavadze made a great contribution to the drawing up of the statute and over the decades was the president of the board of the bank. As he explained to the nobility in one of his first speeches, the bank could not have given them a benefit if they would be unable to return the loan taken from the bank. Therefore, he asked everyone to take out a loan only for purposes that would help repay the money, for example, for the purpose of improvement of household. The bank did a great national work. It financed several schools, the Society for the Spreading of Literacy among Georgians, and the Georgian Theatre, and periodically did numerous other important affairs. Thus, in 1892, during the epidemic of cholera, the board of the bank requested from the general meeting of the founders to allocate 12,000 rubles to treat the ill, to purchase disinfecting means and medicines. When Ilia Chavchavadze noticed that they were hesitating, he addressed them with a speech and convinced them that not only the named amount but much more should be donated if it was necessary to solve the problem. In 1917, after the death of Ilia Chavchavadze, his nephew Kote Abkhazi transferred the property of the bank with the value of 26 million gold rubles, that was 8 million francs, to the National Council of Georgia, and this material wealth was laid in the foundation of proclamation of independence of the country. Ilia Chavchavadze was a lawyer by education, and he understood the importance of the law and its correct enforcement. He contributed greatly to the emancipation reform and drafting of the law of his aunts. In a letter to Russian Achaemenid Seraphim, he openly exposed the selective law prevailing in the empire. For one and the same crime, the punishment was different for Russians and non-Russians. Both in fiction and publicistic essays, he often criticized the corrupt judicial system. The speech of Ilia Chavchavadze in the Russian Supreme Council regarding the repeal of the law on death penalty is especially interesting. Language is one of great importance for its statehood and national identity. That is why, in order to assimilate the Georgians, the Russian Empire made a special attack against the Georgian language. Ilia Chavchavadze wrote numerous critical publicistic essays on this issue. In addition, the Georgian language newspapers and magazines founded by him were also very important for the strengthening of the Georgian language. Ilia Chavchavadze played a significant role in the development of the Georgian critical thought. His literary, critical, and polemical articles are masterpieces of the genre. In artistic works, Ilia Chavchavadze always reflected acute social problems. In addition, during the emancipation reform, Ilia Chavchavadze supported transfer of lands to peasants. He strongly opposed the suppression of the peasant uprising of Guria by armed forces, and at the time of formation of the Kakheti viticulture partnership, he convinced the nobility to allow peasants to join it. Ilia Chavchavadze was a devout Christian, but he had great respect for the religion of others as well. He criticized Russian officials who tried to force the Muslim Georgians of Batumi district to be converted to Christianity. On the initiative of Ilia Chavchavadze and like-minded persons in Batumi district, schools were opened in which a mullah was invited to teach the Quran. Ilia Chavchavadze responded to an article published in a Russian newspaper in which the abundance of cases of robbery and murder committed by Muslims was explained by their ethnic and religious inclination towards crime. Ilia Chavchavadze wrote that no nation or religion urges people to evil and that the reasons for the increase of crime should be sought in other problems. A remarkable example of religious and ethnic tolerance is the story by Ilia Chavchavadze, Nikolos Gostashabishvili. Until the second half of the 19th century, the great part of the population in Georgia was illiterate. The Society for the Spreading of Literacy Among Georgians, headed by Ilia Chavchavadze, opened public schools in all parts of the country, published textbooks and reading books, and distributed a large portion of them, together with educational materials, to those schools free of charge. Ilia Chavchavadze constantly familiarized with the world technical and industrial novelties and tried to introduce them in Georgia. He was one of the first to purchase the plowing, thrashing, and harvesting machinery, incubator, and canning equipment. In addition, he often published articles on up-to-date means against plant diseases and pests. He explained to farmers their legal rights and obligations, helped them to set up cooperatives and partnerships. For the development of agriculture and industry in Georgia, Ilia Chavchavadze attached great significance to opening trade schools, and to illustrate the necessity, he cited the example of Germany, the economic development of which was greatly determined by the high level of vocational schools. From the very period of their appearance on the arena, Ilia Chavchavadze and his associates were dreaming about foundation of a Georgian university. It was exactly in this connection that their confrontation with the figures of the elder generation occurred. The elder generation asked Emperor Alexander II, visiting Tbilisi, to open a military college instead of a university. Nevertheless, Ilia Chavchavadze and like-minded persons managed to do at least the following. Allegedly for a gymnasium, they built a large building which they intended for a university in future. In 1918, in this building, the first Georgian university was opened, and it is in the same building to the present day. As regards the education of Ilia Chavchavadze, although he did not have enough material means to complete his studies and obtain a diploma, he worked very hard on self-education. It is obvious from the records how he worked on the books on political economy, philosophy, history, sociology, and literary criticism. The authors include Herbert Spencer, Friedrich Schlosser, Edward Taylor, Emil Lavelle, Georg Brandes, Georg Weber, Otto Schrader, John Stuart Mill, and many others. Along with the monarchy, the Russian Empire also abolished the independence of the church in Georgia. The Georgian patriots thought that the restoration of autocephaly would be an important step towards independence, and Ilia Chavchavadze too became actively engaged in this struggle. He met specially with Vorontsov Dashkov, Viceroy of the Caucasus, and Obolensky, Procurator of the Synod of Russia. Kalistrata Tsintsadze, archpriest at the time and Catholicos Patriarch subsequently, describes in his memoirs how Ilia Chavchavadze asked him necessary materials on the history of the Georgian Church and how diligently he studied them in order to appear before the Russian officials with substantiated arguments. Although Ilia Chavchavadze did not live to witness either restoration of the church autocephaly or the independence of the country, he had made an invaluable contribution to the preparation of the foundation for both of them. Ilia Chavchavadze could see that the independence of the country would not make sense unless the Georgian people were ready to retain it. Therefore, by his artistic and publicistic compositions, as well as his work, he tried to raise civic consciousness of the population. One of the flaws of the Georgians was incorrect attitude towards labor. Ilia Chavchavadze in the story is that a man. In the images of Luarsab and Darejan depicted the people who either consider labor shameful or live in accordance with the Georgian proverb, useless work is better than useless sitting. In another story, The Widow of the House of Otar, the author demonstrated that by eagerness to work and prudent management of income and expenditure, not only a rich nobleman but even a widowed peasant woman left with a small child is able both to support a family and help others. The author points to the high civic consciousness of the widow by the fact that when she was robbed of hands, she appealed to court to find justice. Although she was aware that because of the corruption of this institution, these two would incur additional expenses, she nevertheless chose the legal way. In the period of Ilia Chavchavadze, the self-government of the city was an elective body, but always a narrow circle of merchants won, and they cared only about their own interests. Ilia Chavchavadze knew that this reality could not have changed without the active involvement of the population. Therefore, in 1897 he wrote an extensive article on the importance of elections and called on everyone to fulfill their civic duty and elect such individuals who would do the universal service. As we can see, Ilia Chavchavadze struggled for the state and civic values that underlie all the democratic countries of the world.